Right now, we maintain, as a nation, 700 to 800 military bases around the world. No other country does anything remotely like that. That is not just very expensive, but that is also a kind of running the world, if not by hitting people, by threatening to hit people, because we have troops and planes and bombs and missiles and all over, right? I mean, right in your neighborhood and not far from. What are we doing? We came out of a situation where we thought this would protect us. And in some ways it did. And even in some ways, I'll grant it does. But you have to ask the question, what else is it doing? And the answer is, it is defining the United States as the holder backer of what we are trying to do here in the Ivory Republic in Africa, or in Malaysia, or in Paraguay. It is the entity that's having a hold on the world, trying to hold us back. When the American naval fleet sits in the South China Sea, a stone's throw from Taiwan, nobody cares about Taiwan. Nobody is fooled by this. Maybe a few Americans who are naive. This is not about Taiwan. Taiwan is not a concern for China either. It's the symbolism of it all. And it allows the Chinese to say, look at them. They are here threatening us because we are out competing them. Neither you or I can resolve how honest or true that is. It's got some truth, it's got some exaggeration. But we are giving them the ammunition, if you like, with which to characterize us in this way. I'll give you another example. There's an enormous opposition inside Europe to the war with Russia in Ukraine. There are many, many Europeans, pro-capitalist, anti-capitalist, across the board, who think that is the worst mistake of their lifetimes, that struggle. They are clear in their mind, and I'm not arguing whether they're right or wrong. It's wrong, they should never have done it, it's stupid, the Russians will win, the Ukrainians will lose, end of story, it's a waste of money, and it is making the people of Europe furious because we're cutting back social programs while we fund a losing war that we don't care about in the first place. But that's a real problem. What are you going to do? You had 3 elections in the last few weeks. Britain, France, and Germany. Every one of those elections should tell you the same thing. The mass of people are rejecting the conventional politicians. You better be careful, because if they're doing that there, they're gonna do it here too. Maybe Trump is halfway there already. Maybe what comes next will be more. Let me give you an example. For 15 years, you had the conservatives. As the conditions of existence of the British working class declined over the last 20 years, and they declined worse than anywhere else in the Western world, the British, the conservatives came up with the great idea.
Hey, what's up, fam? How are you doing? I hope you're doing fine wherever you are today. As you know, this is your presenter, Agent Stories, and I'm hoping that you're fine wherever you are. Now, there's something which is so concerning, and I found this video on YouTube, and I thought that sharing it with my people from the Black community, it's important, because I'm always keeping my eyes in what is happening across the world, and it's important that I could share this with my community. Yes, it's important, and I think that everybody is seeing how the economy is, the global economy is behaving. It's time for you to know that the markets are crashing, right? Speculation of World War III, this is amongst the things which are happening, and people are speculating certain kind of things. And I happened to find this video by this economist, Richard D. Wolff. And I think most of you have seen what he says and what he does and what he do, because it's important to also discuss about economic situations which are happening in the United States. Yes, I know it's important, right? That's why I decided to share with you this video. There's a critique that Dr. Richard D. Wolff gives to the United States, the economy of the United States, and generally the global market, of how things are unraveling. Now, Richard D. Wolff provides a sharp critique of the U.S. capitalist system, focusing on the inherent contradictions and unsustainable practices. Now, his arguments for why markets will crash and his advice to people to hold cash, right? Because people are being advised to hold cash, typically revolves around structural economic issues that, as he has seen as self-inflicted by America's economic and political system. And he gives a breakdown of a number of things that I believe it's important for us to talk about, because there might be a huge crash that is coming. And what are people not being told? I mean, what are the elites not telling you? I think he tries to break down this message. It's important, advising people to hold their cash. And I think I also have something beautiful to share with my black community, right? So I want us to watch this video. As usually know, these are presented Jintok Stories, and I'll be back and we'll discuss about this. I'm wearing a Bitcoin t-shirt. I'm not doing any brand promotion or anything, but those are amongst the things that I want to talk to you today. I want to share with you the importance of diversifying your finances and all those things, right? And for those people who have invested in crypto, I mean, you're doing good, because you already know what's happening and you know the games that the elites are playing, right? So let's dive right into the video. I'll be back and we'll talk about it.
Declined over the last 20 years, and they declined worse than anywhere else in the Western world, the British. The conservatives came up with the great idea, blame the Europeans. That's right up there with the United States today, blame the immigrants. Are you crazy? The United States is a country of 330 million. Undocumented immigrants in this country, maybe 10 to 15 million people. And among them, the poorest people on the planet. They are not going to shape the economy of 330 million. That's childish. Mm-hmm. That never happened, isn't happening now, and isn't about to happen. But if people are upset enough, and they are, and if they've suffered enough, and they have, then they are vulnerable to being told, okay, so the British did it. They left Europe with great fanfare 10 years ago, a little less, 2016. Brexit. Okay, they have Brexit. Their condition got worse, not better, which any fool could have told them. Why? Because that's not your problem. There are pros and cons about Europe. That's another. But the notion that by separating yourself from Europe, you're going to solve your problems, you got to be crazy. It's like if you stop the flow of immigrants across the border into Texas, you're going to make a friggin' bit of difference. It's just childish. But this is what smart people do when they're jammed. Now let's look at France. France has a middle-of-the-road leader, a nice young man, so he hasn't got age as a problem, Mr. Macron. Okay? In the National Assembly vote a month or two ago, 3 major parties contested. A left-wing party that's virtually fascist by Marine Le Pen, the National Front. His own party, the sitting president of the country, and a unity of 4 little leftist parties. The French Socialist Party, the French Communist Party, the French Green Party, and the French Socialist Party that takes the name France Unbowed. Those 4 came together. And you know what the French people did for their president? His party came in 3rd out of 3. The number 1 party was a party led by a former member of the French Communist Party, who is still big leftist. That's the largest political bloc in the French Assembly right now. And then in Germany, you had an election. It wasn't national the way it was in Britain and France. It was in the eastern region. 2 or 3 Länder, they're called in Germany. They're like states in the United States, roughly. In those, the right-wing quasi-fascist party that has arisen in Germany, that's an achievement, man, because Germany is where they had Nazis and Hitler. So to be a right-wing, to salute with Hitler, to have a swastika on your shirt, it's something anywhere in the world, but to do it in Germany, amazing. They came in first. Who came in second? A relative political unknown. A woman, Sarah Wagenknecht, who is a Marxist, has been a Marxist all her life, was a fixture of the Marxist left in Germany, decided to run on her own, and comes in second. Okay, what we're seeing here is a rejection of the status quo on a massive scale. You got to deal with that, and none of them are. You know what Mr. Starmer, the new head of Britain, his first 2 acts as the new Labour Party Prime Minister? He's cutting fuel assistance to poor people in England as they face the coming winter where they are desperately in need. Why? Because fuel has gone up in price. Why? Because British can't get their hands on Russian oil and gas, which is the cheap way Britain has heated itself in wintertime. so they can see real clear the connection with Ukraine and Russia on the one hand and their own suffering. And you know what else Mr. Starmer said is, besides saving money on giving fuel aid to the poor, he's going to give more to Ukraine. Man, this is the end for him. This is the end for the Labour Party. They are creating a situation where the British working class is going to finally figure out that relying on the Conservatives and the Labour Party back and forth between these two is not solving their problem. And why am I telling you this? Because in the United States, we are in the midst of the process of our working class reaching the same conclusion about the Republicans and the Democrats. This is holding back. These conflicts play out. Britain is a basket case economically and becoming more so. They don't even address the problems they have. They are so caught up in not being willing to face their real problems and make the changes. The empire is gone. And no matter how pompous the inauguration of their new King Charles, it doesn't make it more than a piece of Hollywood theater. You know, the Chinese a year ago began to deliver around the world a statistical result, which the United Nations endorsed. It went like this. Over the last 10 years, we have raised 800 million people out of poverty in China. Their average income went from X to Y. Y is higher than X by enough to say they are no longer in poverty, they are in modest, or whatever the terms are that the UN uses. Okay, it doesn't matter whether it's exaggerated or not. Probably is, but who knows? But it's the right thing to say. It gives them the word that the rest of the world, the overwhelming majority of the rest of the world, is most interested in. How can we do that? Let me give a statistic just to try to help people get a handle on it. I recently was invited to give a speech to an organization in Lagos, Nigeria. And in order to prepare for that speech and what they asked me to talk about, I went back to reacquaint myself with this example of Africa in relationship to the United States. And I did it because Nigeria is a very important country in Africa, one of the most important, maybe the most important in Africa. Here's a 1-minute summary. The population of Nigeria, which will amaze people, is 220 million people. Okay? That's 2/3 of the United States in Nigeria. We, the United States now, is a country 50% larger than Nigeria. We have 50% more people, roughly. What is the GDP, the gross domestic product, the total output of goods and services achieved in Nigeria in one calendar year recently, 2022, 2023, whatever I could get? $500 billion. So about $500 billion, give or take. What is the GDP of the United States recent year? 22, 23 trillion. Okay, that means that while the United States is 50% more people, it has 50 times the wealth of Nigeria. Now, I don't think that's a sustainable arrangement for anybody. No matter what your economics are or your politics or the ideology or anything, that's not sustainable. You cannot, especially in a world where those 220 million are in a position, which they are, to learn all about the difference. This is not going to work. And indeed, the proof of it was that the people who invited me to speak there believed that. And that's what they wanted me to talk about, because they find it intolerable. And they're upset and they're bitter and they're angry, or they're, a good number of Nigerians leave Nigeria. They don't want to, but the difference between the life they can lead in the United States or Europe or someplace else is just so enormous that for their husband or their wife or their kids, look, I understand all of that. My parents are refugees from Europe. They came to the United States to survive and to do better, which they did. But it's not sustainable. You've got to do something. You cannot fob that off. But in fact, that's what's being done. Neither Europe nor the United States is addressing this question. It just doesn't do it. Give them verbalisms, give them noise, just noise. The Chinese are everywhere, building bridges, erecting schools. It's amazing to watch. We in the West, we are making it easier for this to blow up in our face. This self-defense of pretending this isn't going on is killing us. It's like watching a slow-motion train heading into a stone wall. You want to scream at the people on the train, stop the train, get off the train. You have the power, you can do it. Pull the brake, yell at the conductor, do something, but they're so busy partying that they don't recognize what's happening. I think there are very basic similarities between the United States and China, which I would be glad to tell you about. And those are more than enough that a comparable deal could be and should be worked out. Nuclear war is not an option unless you're lunatic. And I'm assuming that the prevailing mentality in Washington, in Beijing, and everywhere else is not lunatics. Americans don't understand what terrible war is. They just don't. They've never suffered being on the losing end of a major war fought on their own territory. The Chinese have, the Japanese have, the Russians have, the Europeans have, and I could go on. But we haven't. In World War II, bombs fell in Hawaii at Pearl Harbor, and never again. No American city has ever gone through that. The only time I ever went to a bomb shelter was when I was a student in my public school here in the United States, and they taught us how to get under our desk in case there was a bomb, which none of us understood and thought was a funny game. And when Americans talk about war, there's a bravado that sounds like a bad cowboy movie in which, you see the shooting, and then when it's over, everybody gets up and goes and has a cup of coffee or a beer. It's not a real trauma that settles into the consciousness. So my view is, here's what's similar. The Chinese never broke, not yet, from the capitalist commitment to organize production in a particular way. And that way has a small group of people at the top. They'll make the basic decisions. They decide basically what's going to be produced, how it's going to be produced, where it's going to be produced, and what is done with the revenue. And the rest of the people are employees. And they have the monopoly of the power. Do they share some of it? Sure they do. Especially if they're smart, they understand. But that's where the power is, and that's where the wealth accumulates, because they keep whatever the net revenue is, a disproportionate amount for the owners and the top executives and all the rest. The Chinese don't do all that different, but they do substitute state officials, so that is very different. But they, ironically, are going to have a harder time maintaining that system than we in the West, because we have the ideological rationalization of it all. We teach, as I have done all my life, in the university, that this capitalist arrangement is necessary, is efficient. This is like teaching a catechism in a Catholic school, if you know, or any other religion. I don't mean to pick out Roman Catholicism. I know that we're teaching an ideology that rationalizes that. The problem in China, they teach an ideology that doesn't. If you open up Marx's Capital, which they teach people to do, Marx is all about there's another way of doing things, ladies and gentlemen. And in this country, we call it a worker co-op. It's a horizontally organized enterprise. It's a community that decides democratically what to produce, how to produce, where to produce, and what to do with the revenue. That's what Marx was talking about. And that's going to be on the agenda one way or another, there and here. And then the real question becomes, how will these two systems engage and struggle with the challenge that's coming from below? And the irony, which I don't think is far-fetched, is that they have a lot to get together on. They're afraid of that. They're afraid here in one way, but they're afraid another way there. And that, plus the threat of nuclear war, is more than enough to be able to do together now what Britain and the United States did back in the 19th century. We are in a problem position. A unipolar world, U.S. on top, is becoming a multipolar world, contesting empires. And not just the U.S. and China, Europe, as I tried to suggest, trying to find some way to survive in this multipolar world. But that means that the U.S. empire is in decline. We can dance and pretend all we want around it, try to keep up the denial. But if you remember that denial didn't work well for all those other empires, you might at least open the possibility that it's not working well for us either.
Hey, what's up? What's up, everybody? I hope you're fine. Now, the purpose of this video is not to fearmonger anybody. The purpose of this video is not to make you afraid, but is to encourage you that in as much as what the economy or preparing us for what is yet to come, because one of the biggest economists like Richard DeWolf, Robert Kiyosaki have talked about this, and I think if you're a person who is always following what's happening, like the economic world markets and all those stuff that are relating with finances and how the market is operating and how the US government is holding debts, these are the most important things, are the most important topics that I believe that it's right for us to have a talk about them. Now, Richard DeWolf tries to talk about something which is important, but just before saying that, there is something that I want to tell you. Black folks, I'm telling you, like, person to person, I know you have some people, and congratulations for those people who have joined the cryptocurrency movement, because this is the new future. This is the new phase of the currencies, of how we'll be operating. And even the elites, I think they know this, but they don't wanna tell you or share with you this. But I'm right here sharing with you this. The most place, like the banks, might default with your finances, and I think a lot of people are having insecurities with American banks, and also some parts of Africa. This is something which is happening right now. For those who don't know, the safest place that you could keep your wealth as a digital asset is through cryptocurrency. I don't know which type of coin you'll choose, but go there, do your research, see what you can work with. Look at the best cryptos that you could work with, maybe 3, maybe you can choose one meme coin and other stable coins which are important. Look at the tokens that do your research, because that's where the world is heading to. And I think that's the amazing part that people are not being told. If there is one thing that cannot be affected by the inflation, is the crypto, right? So I'm not trying to vouch to you to buy a given certain coin or do what. As I said, I'm not promoting any brand. I'm just sharing this information with my brothers and sisters, because it is a store of value. Bitcoin and any other coin, it could be XRP. For those who don't know, those are just types of coins. It could be any type of coin, but they are a source of wealth, right? They are not affected by inflation, and you can always be secure once you put them in a given wallet that will serve you right. You can always be secure that you will enjoy your resources. Now, I'm here again. That's the message that I wanted to pass just before jumping right to the analysis that I was supposed to give. Now, the thing is, you're being told to hold your cash, probably because of certain advantages, right? If you're a person who's investing in crypto, put certain amount that that even if the market crashes, because even there is volatility of the cryptocurrency, and so when this happens, you don't need to withdraw your money while it's at its deep, because you'll get losses. What you want to do as a person who's investing in crypto, you want to take out when there is a profit, right? So I thought that that's important for us to know. Now, let's do this. You've watched the video. You've understood why the markets are crashing, or if it hasn't dawned to you, it will happen sometime soon. There is anticipation that World War III has started. Yeah, all these crazy things are happening, right? And China is getting out of the dollar. The BRICS are leaving the United States dollar, and all these things are happening. You don't want to be left in this economy which is crashing. You need to get your time to understand that you need to move with the elites. And what I'm trying to do to you, what I'm trying to tell you, is having one of these, because it's important, right? Now, I'm gonna go to the analysis of Dr. Richard DeWolf and what he says about all these. Hold your cash, the market is crashing, because I feel like there are a couple of things that we need to talk about that I feel like it's important. Now, the first thing that he talks about, factors that could lead to the crash of the United States economy and the global economy, is one, we have the excessive corporate debt and unsustainable practices. Now, you need to understand that Richard DeWolf points out that many corporates rely onto debt to finance operation, stock buybacks, and expansions rather than reinvesting in productive activities. This creates a bubble, right? One, debt levels reach unsustainable highs, leading to defaults during market corrections or economic slowdowns. Two, stock buybacks artificially inflate stock prices, making markets more fragile and disconnected from the economic fundamentals. The second thing that I noticed in his analysis that he talked about is inequality and demand deficiency. One of Wall's central critiques is that stagnant wages and rising inequality reduces the purchase power to ordinary Americans, right? Inequality and demand deficiency. The prices of goods and services keeps on increasing, housing, health, insurance, name it all, but the wages are not increasing, right? And you know how these affects you as the buyer or as the consumer, right? Now, he continues by discussing that wealth concentration means that most of the money is hoarded or invested by the wealthy rather than spent on goods and services. Two, consumer demand, the engine of capitalist economies, weakens, creating downward pressure on growth. Now, the third thing that I'm going to be talking about is speculative bubble and financial instability. Now, Wolf describes how Americans' economic policies favor speculative investment. For example, real estate, stocks, or cryptocurrencies. What I'm trying to tell you, right? Now, a sudden hike in interest rates to control inflation, as seen recently, can burst these bubbles, leading to financial panic and crashes. I know most of people are in panic, and that's what the elites want you to do. They want you to panic. They want you to sell what you have because the market is crashing, right? After selling, they'll have them and the price will be high, that only few people can manage to buy them. This happens with cryptocurrencies, right? The fourth thing that I'm going to be talking about is Federal Reserve policies and inflation. According to Wolf, the Fed's delayed response to inflation and abrupt monetary tightening creates instability because, one, he notes that prolonged low interest rates lead to reckless borrowing by both corporations and consumers. Two, sharp rate increases strains these borrowers, leading to defaults and market corrections. The fifth thing that I'm going to be talking about is deindustrialization and outsourcing. America's reliance on cheap import and the outsourcing of manufacturing jobs. Wolf argues this has hollowed out the domestic economy because the America is always trying to look for cheap. For example, they need workers. They know that paying American citizens will be so much expensive because of one or two, three reasons, you understand. They want to take immigrants who would work for cheap. Now, this outsourcing, this is how it affects the domestic economy. Because in the long run, what they're going to do, they are only going to favor these immigrants who have come to this country for a short period of time, not looking or taking into account what about the citizens who have lived in this place, who are trying to control this economy for the longest time. I'm also gonna be talking about the U.S. short-term corporate profits for long-term economic sustainability. Short-term profits for long-term sustainability, which cannot happen. Now, by eroding the middle class, America creates a less stable economic base, making recessions and crashes more likely. The sixth thing that I'm going to be talking about is unsustainable housing market as also a factor. Now, Wolf highlights the market as key vulnerability. One, rapid home prices increases. Yeah, people have been complaining. High housing, right? Due to speculation and low interest rates have made housing unaffordable for many. 2. Rising mortgages. The mortgage rates are now cooling demand, creating risk of a significant correlation or crash in housing prices. Right. Another thing is political dysfunction and gridlock. Wolf critiques how America's political system, dominated by corporate interest, prevents meaningful reforms. 1. Necessary investments in infrastructure, education, healthcare are blocked. Right. Worsening structural inefficiencies, partisan conflicts over debt ceilings, taxation, social spending creates uncertainty, further destabilizing markets. The eighth thing is over-reliance on the dollar. Wolf also points to America over-reliance on the US dollar as the global reserve currency. Geopolitical tensions, right? China and Russia and alternative currency alliances could undermine the dollar's dominance. They just showed them the middle finger what the BRICS is trying to do. When we talk about China and Russia, we're talking about the BRICS. If the dollar loses value or credibility, the US markets and consumers will face severe economic shocks. So that was my analysis of the video, and I hope that you have taken something out of it. Until then, I'm hoping to see you in my next video. Peace, love, and harmony. Salute.